this is Forma. I'm going to be reading the next part of Because of the Rabbit. To offer grooming, hold your hand on the ground in front of the rabbit. If the rabbit accepts, he will come to you. Scared had been training in secret. She was miles ahead with excited, nowhere in sight. More than anything, I wish school were over and I could go to my room, close the door with Lappy, and never come out. It was so unfair. Lappy could have died if Dad and I hadn't rescued him. And he loved me now. The girls kept talking as they ate their lunch, but I hid the rest of the pickles in the napkin. I didn't even care about pretending I liked them anymore. How could this have happened? I'd pushed the worry that Lappy might belong to someone else far into the background, and the idea of coming home from school without Lappy there made me want to cry. Maybe the Abbotts had loved him very much. Maybe they'd been so mean to him that he ran away. And even if they had loved him, Iris said the posters were down, so they must have given up on finding him. Maybe they had a new rabbit by now. When lunch was finally over, I told Leah I'd catch up to them at recess and went to the girls' bathroom near my classroom to pull myself together. There were other girls' rooms in the school, but I just wanted something familiar, even if it was a longer walk. I'd hoped to have the bathroom to myself, but there was another girl washing her hands. I picked a sink close to the door and didn't look at her. I didn't know what to do. I'd only agreed to give Lappy back to the shelter if they called. I never agreed to go looking for his owner. But a small, whiny, know-it-all voice inside me whispered, "But it's not right to keep him if he doesn't belong to you." Time for recess. In the mirror, I saw Jack in the doorway waiting for me. All I wanted was a moment to myself to figure out what to do. But there was nowhere to be yourself at school, not even in the bathroom. "Not now," I snapped. "Can't you see I'm in the girls' room?" Hurt jumped into Jack's eyes. At once, I knew I'd made a mistake. I hadn't meant to yell. It had just come out that way. And he turned and ran. All my worries exploded out of me. "Wait!" In the hallway, I saw Jack disappear into our classroom. We weren't supposed to be in there at recess, but I didn't care. Even if I got in trouble, nothing could be worse than how I already felt. When I stepped inside the classroom, it looked empty. Jack wouldn't climb out a window, would he? Then I saw his sneaker toes sticking out from under a big, long table in the front of Miss Hutton's fabulous fifth grader's bulletin board. I crawled under the table with him. Jack's face was buried in his arms across his knees. "I'm so sorry," I said. "I just need to be alone for a minute." Jack didn't lift his head. We sat in silence, just the sound of the clock ticking and the muffled voices of kids going outside. All morning, I wished the clock would go faster, but now I didn't want those hands to move at all. In fact, I wish I could go back to the night before school started, before I realized how hard it was all going to be. Back when Lappy was just mine and anything seemed possible. But I guess anything includes bad things too. "Something horrible happened at lunch," I said quietly, "but no matter how awful I feel, it wasn't right that I took it out on you." "It wasn't right," Jack echoed in his arms. I felt ashamed, and I had yelled at him and hurt his feelings. Jack had sat with me when I didn't have anyone. He'd voted for my idea against Iris. I told him things I hadn't told anyone else, including one of Pepe's stories. And I rolled my eyes and yelled at him. So what if Jack wasn't exactly like everyone else? I wasn't either. If Pepe were here, I knew what story he'd tell me. I'd always been one of my favorites, but I understood it in a new way today. "Can I tell you a story?" I asked. "It's about the day Monsieur Lapin tried to be like Madame Sattel, the nuthatch." "Why?" Jack asked into his arms. "A nuthatch is a bird." I wasn't sure if the why part went with "Can I tell you a story?" or with Monsieur Lapin wanting to be a nuthatch, but I answered the last one, because nuthatches can climb up and down tree trunks and peck out nasty bugs. Jack lifted his head. "Rabbits are herbivores." I nodded. "True, but Monsieur Lapin has rabbit magic, remember? Anything is possible." "Yes," Jack said slowly, not sounding completely convinced. I kept going anyway. "So it happened once that Monsieur Lapin decided that he'd climb a tree and get some tasty bugs to show off to Madame Satelli, that he could do anything she could. Nuthatches can go down a tree trunk head first," Jack said. "Only a few birds can do that." Really? That's another reason for Monsieur Lapin to be jealous, I replied. So he tried to climb the tree, but rabbit claws aren't made for climbing bark, and he got scared halfway up. And when he tried to climb down head first, he fell to the ground. I added that in just for Jack. Did he get a concussion? Jack asked. No, he was only embarrassed, not hurt, I said. And then Madame Citelli said, Silly Monsieur Lapin, you never be a nuthatch. You're a rabbit. Then she flew into the trees and climbed down the tree trunk head first, with food to share with him. They ate it together as friends. So it was. I looked at Jack. That's one of my favorite stories. I think it means that a real friend will like you for you. And if you aren't exactly alike about everything, that's okay. I gave a small shrug. It gives you something to need from each other. Sometimes I have to be Emma Nuthatch, Jack said. I smiled. The first real smile since lunch. That wasn't what I was planning to say, but it worked. And you are Jackrabbit, I replied. We stayed under the table so long that my legs ached, and I heard the kids coming in from recess. I couldn't move, though. Not yet. I felt safe under there. And when I crawled out, that safe feeling would be over. I'd have to deal with the napkin in my pocket. The horrible thing that had happened at lunch was about Lappy. I said quietly, Someone lost a rabbit, and maybe it's him. Jack stared at me. Maybe it's him? I nodded, tears filling my eyes. I'm scared to find out if Lappy belongs to another family. I have to call them, and I don't know what to say. Jack crawled out from under the table. Where was he going? Didn't he hear what I said? Now I was all alone. Then I heard Jack ripping pages from his notebook. What are you doing? I asked. Coming out from under the table. Cue cards, he replied. Jack handed me a pencil. As I wrote, my hand shook so hard. It didn't even look like my handwriting. Hello, my name is Emma, and I found a rabbit. A rabbit will grieve the loss of a mate. That night after supper, I went to Owen's room. Can you help me with something? I need to find out someone's phone number, and they haven't lived here in a very long time. He looked up from his homework. Can't you just ask them? I shook my head. Please don't ask me any more questions. Okay, well, if they have a landline, we can probably look it up online. For once, I was glad for the miserable cell phone service in the mountains. Most people still had landlines at home because they were more predictable. As Owen opened his laptop, I pulled the napkin out of my pocket. All I have is his last name and the street they lived on. I tried to act normal, though my insides were exploding into sharp pieces. They moved here over the summer. Owen looked at the napkin. What's this about, Em? I swallowed hard. It's just that something came up at school. I need to ask someone a question. It was pretty clear that I wasn't telling him everything, but telling the truth isn't always as simple as two truths and a lie. Sometimes the whole truth is just too much to say at once. I might even be able to find out first name for you, Owen said. No guarantees, though. That's okay, I said quickly. If you can get me the phone number, I'll take it from there. While Owen searched online, I looked around me. His room had changed, but he still had a Lego boat we built together on his shelf. It made me happy to see it there, like maybe he still cared about it. I wish I had thought to show it to Jack. He probably would have liked it, even if it wasn't impressive as his dinosaur skeleton. Maybe I could invite him over again. But if I did, what would that mean? Working on an assignment together was one thing, but hanging out was another. And school seemed to have a lot of social rules that I didn't know. Owen wrote a phone number on the bottom of the napkin. Try this one, Em. If it's not right, come back and I'll keep looking. Thanks. I started to go, but I paused in the doorway. Owen? He looked up from his textbook. Why do you keep that old Lego boat? I blurted out the question fast, before I could change my mind. The Lego boat? He looked up at the shelf. Oh, I don't know. I just like it. We worked hard on it, and I like to remember us putting it together. It was fun, remember? I nodded. You aren't afraid your friends would make fun of it if they saw it? He shrugged. A little teasing would be okay, but a real friend would see that it mattered to me. I sighed. That kind of friend is hard to find. Yes, and you have to be that kind of friend back, Owen said. It works both ways, so you don't always have to be the friend you want to have. I opened my mouth to say, I have been, but then I stuck my bottom lip. Had I really? Owen grinned. Hey, Em, this might sound silly, but let's make another big Lego project together after soccer's done and things aren't so busy. I'd like that. Part of me doubted it would ever happen. After soccer, there would probably be something else. But even so, knowing that he wanted to do something with me filled that empty space inside me. I wish I could tell him the real reason for the phone number, but if I told him, I would have to call, and I wasn't ready. Back in my room, I told myself it was too late. Maybe the family had little kids who were in bed. I'd have more time on the weekend. I should practice my reveals first. I needed to get my props together, but deep inside, I knew timing wasn't the problem. Every time I looked at Lappy, hopping around my feet, chinning everything in sight, I didn't want to call. I rescued Lappy, but now I needed him to rescue me. I needed him to be there when I got home from school. I needed him to love me best. And I needed to believe that Pepe had sent him to me to bring me Magic Rabbit. Or maybe that was just wishing. Maybe there was no Magic Rabbit. Maybe Lappy was just someone else's stray pet and I was just a weird girl that no one wanted as her best friend. I put the slip of paper with the name and address with the cue cards at the very back of my assignment book. And then I closed it tight. Rabbits have a blind spot in front of their nose. It's the only place they can't see. Let me introduce you to my friend Emma. Emma likes to go kayaking. Emma once climbed Mount Katahdin. Emma has a pet parakeet. In my room, watching Jack describe me on the video, even my truths didn't feel completely like me. But as Leah had said, this was just a little project, and I didn't have to make such a big deal. I had started with the props. I opened the email Owen had sent with my kayaking photos. The first ones were exactly what I'd asked for, me with Eagle Island in the background. Then I came to the photo I'd taken of Owen. The nose of my kayak was in the foreground of the shot, and Owen was far enough ahead that he was slightly out of focus. I print that one too, just for me. I had planned to ask Dad if he could bring Lappy to school as a surprise, but then Iris would see Lappy and ask if I'd called yet. And maybe if I talked him about it, I'd cry. I decided to bring a photo of Molly and Maggie instead. I love them too. Maybe I could even find a good photo from last Halloween. I had dressed as Alice from Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, and Molly and Maggie had worn big bow ties and spinning caps as Tweedledee and Tweedledum. I bet the kids would find that funny. For the last truth, I went to the windowsill for my Keep Going rock. I didn't have to show anyone what it said, but it was still from the mountain. Outside the window, it was almost dark, but I could still see the trees and the mountains on the other side of the lake. I miss seeing the lake change during the day. Amazing, all these things you don't even realize you'll miss until you leave them or they leave you. Looking at Keep Going in my hand, I found myself thinking about Jack. He'd kept going, trying to be my friend, even as I was hoping for someone else. Owen's words suddenly hit me hard. You also have to be a friend you want to have. I looked over at my checklist, Emma's best friend checklist. Likes me best, likes the things I like, shares secret jokes, is always on my side, lets me be me, forgives me when I'm sorry. I hadn't lived up to my checklist myself, not with Jack or Owen or even Lappy. I hadn't always been on Jack's side. Owen had let me be me, but I only wanted Owen to be himself if it included me. I didn't want him to change or leave me behind. I wanted to keep Lappy mine because I needed him. In fact, I wanted them all to be kind of a friend I needed, but I hadn't tried as hard to be the one they needed. Maybe it was too much to expect one person to be my everything best friend anyway. Maybe I already had what I needed, just spread out across a bunch of people. Some parts with Owen, some parts with Lappy, some parts with Jack, some parts with Leah, even some parts to come to with kids I didn't know yet. But I had to be a best friend too. I picked up the napkin. Lappy loved us now, but maybe he had loved his first family too. With all my heart, I wanted him to stay with us. But what did he want? I knew what I had to do. Even if it was hard or embarrassing, or people got mad at me, I had to tell the truth about everything, even if it meant that I lost Lappy.